And today we get the privilege of finding out more about Reclaim. It is a great organization here in Mississippi that offers the gospel hope and practical solutions, which I think we can all get behind. And if you're watching us over at SuperTalk.fm or at SuperTalk TV, you'll see I'm not alone. Joining me in the studio is Brett and Allison Barnhill. They are, well, not the brainchilds behind it from the beginning, but they have sort of taken the reins of Reclaim and seeing it into its next chapter. So welcome, guys.
Thank you, Rebecca.
We're excited to be here.
It's so excited because and we'll get to that, but this is so foreshadowing. If for those longtime Good Things listeners, if you can remember back like 3 or 4 years ago, we had on a great story about a renovation in Marks, Mississippi, and we're fast forwarding now to hear about the expansion from that and the good work that's still going on. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. So, Brett, let's just kick it off because you're now the executive director of Reclaimed, but it hadn't always been that way. So take us to the beginning of Reclaimed. Where did it get its start?
Yeah, sure. So Reclaim got its start back in the great town of Starkville, Mississippi, and it was really an idea that was birthed out of several different families there that knew each other from church and work and business, and actually the husbands were involved in a Bible study together. And so one time a few of these men came together, and one of them shared, hey, I've just really been feeling and my wife and I have been feeling like we need to adopt, and we feel called to do international adoption. Well, one of them responded with, well, wait, hold on. I have the exact same story. God is calling us to adopt. And so these families just started on this journey of figuring out what that meant, and it was new, and sharing about that. And so somewhere along the line, a guy named Jason Stoker, who is the founding executive director for Reclaim Project, great friend of mine, still in Starkville, him and Shannon joined in and said, hey, wouldn't this be an awesome thing if we could start a nonprofit to help fund these adoptions, but also raise awareness for orphan care and working with vulnerable children, not just in Mississippi, but around the world. And so they took off, used their business, Deep South Pout, which is still, it's a women's clothing boutique up in Starkville, to really launch a nonprofit alongside those families. And so they formed a board, went to figure out how do you start a nonprofit, how do you get a 501c3 up off the ground, and so that was back in 2012. And during that time, Allison, my wife, was living in Africa. This is before we were married, with a girl named Casey Shackelford. They had moved there as two young college girls right out of Mississippi College, graduated, were education majors, and said, hey, we want to do something for orphans and vulnerable children across the globe. So they moved.
Allison, I'm so interested in what is someone who just ups and says with their roommate. I mean, I think we all, if we went to college, you had a friend roommate or whatever, and most of us, we may have had some wild and crazy ideas together, but never leaving and moving to Africa. So what called you there?
Well, my calling towards missions and all that kind of started in high school. God just began tugging at my heart, and I had been exposed to a couple different ministries that were doing cool work in Africa. So went to Mississippi College, and probably like a lot of early 18-year-olds, I didn't really know what to study. So I thought education seems like a good broad, I love children, and so this seems like a great idea, and it was a great program. Like the education program at Mississippi College is still really involved in our programs. Their professors have come over on multiple trips to Africa and things like that, but through the course of college and getting my degree, I just really felt like I didn't feel called to teach in the classroom in America. I had been over to Africa on several mission trips throughout college. We actually had a professor, Robert Fortenberry, he's the missions pastor now at First Baptist Jackson here in Mississippi. But he was teaching on furlough at Mississippi College, and Brett and I both had him for an intercultural communications class. And he would tell stories about Africa and sharing the gospel in these remote villages. And here I am thinking okay, I'm kind of trying to study to be a teacher, but everything he's saying is really intriguing. And so we actually asked, he and his wife, if we took a semester off of college and just came and lived with you and your family, would you teach us about missions and life in Africa? And he was kind of if that's okay with your parents, I mean, sure.
That was a really good question to ask.
Yeah, and so I went back and talked to my dad, and his first response was, absolutely not. But through further conversations, and there were 4 of us who went, so we took a semester off, lived with he and his wife, and just learned about Africa and the needs there. And just, I mean, you know how it is. You can hear about something, but when you see it firsthand, it changes you, and
Absolutely.
It changes your perspectives and your passions. And so we lived across the street from an orphan care center that had been started by a group of Canadian women, and it had run out of funding, but the building was still there. And so 2 local women would show up every day with no pay and a group of about 20 children, and they would just stand out in the yard of this building, and anything she could think of to entertain them or teach them. She taught them swing dancing and should try to teach them manners, and they had no funding, but the heart was there to care for these children. We were living in Botswana at the time, which is one of the HIV and AIDS capitals of the world. So at that time, 1 in 4 children in Botswana was an orphan. And so I don't know, it really impacted me. And so I went, after that semester that we spent, went back to MC, and my girlfriend Casey, who had been over to Africa on some summer mission trips, I sat down with her one day. We were at the Barnes & Noble at the Renaissance. This was back in 2010, 11. And we just sat down and we were like, man, there's this passion like brewing in our hearts. We don't really know what to do with it. And we got out a Subway napkin and just wrote out like a kind of a dream. What if we moved over there and worked with local existing churches to try to equip them with maybe some sustainable business models to care for the needs of orphans in the community? Because we saw how like lots of organizations had come in with great intentions, and then eventually their visas expired or whatever it was, because there wasn't a sustainability aspect to it, they would always fizzle out. And so our hope was, can we come in and do some small business models, even if the ministry is kept small? So we started with just 10 children. If it's sustained locally, then they're not dependent on us. And so Casey and I, prayed about it. We met with some local business people and sat down with our little plan, which is like a Subway napkin. We're like, we want to move to Africa and start orphan care and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, what's your plan for funding? And we're like, oh, we don't know. Well, what's your plan for a car? Oh, we don't, really have a plan for that either. But they helped us kind of come up with a funding plan. And so anyways, a few days after we graduated, we moved over there to Africa, and God did it. I mean, God did it all, because you can hear how ignorant we were about what all went into this. But we started our first orphan care center in Botswana, and Jason, the founding director of Reclaim Project, got connected to us about halfway through our time there and was kind of like, what's the long plan here, like beyond now? And we're like, we don't know, because we don't have for ourselves any kind of sustainable funding. Like, we went with the money in our bank accounts, and like my dad helped sponsor us and a few local people, but there wasn't a long vision. It was just to try to start this one little thing. And Jason was like, well, what if we got behind you guys? Would you want to repeat this model?
And that was reclaimed, got behind. What I love about this story is all the good things that were going on at one time to sort of all come together, right? I mean, you were all, taking the step or the leap of faith and doing what you thought you were being called at this certain time in 2 different parts of Mississippi and parts of the world. And then they're going to start to sort of move together to come to where, it's at now. So fast forward to, how long have you been executive director, Brett?
Yeah, so it's been about 2.5 years. Allison and I got married. Jason hired us on from in the very beginning, and we went to work trying to build a sustainable ministry to kids in Africa. And so we moved to Africa. We were there about 6 years, and then 2.5 years ago, Jason had resigned, and still a huge supporter of Reclaimed and very involved, but there was a need for a new executive director. So Allison had been there. Our kids were getting about school age. Bo, our oldest, he's 6 years old, just turned 6 this month. And we have a little boy named Hunter, who's 2 years old. They're both born in South Africa. But there really was a need for a change for Allison and I to be back here in the States, maybe to get them in school and be connected here in the States. So we moved back here 2.5 years ago, and Reclaimed had been in Starkville. And Allison's family was here in Jackson. We knew a lot of people here in Jackson because of going to school at Mississippi College. And so we presented to the board the idea, hey, what if we moved our headquarters to Jackson. And so Robert Green at Fondren Church, they've been big supporters of Reclaim for a long time. They said, hey, we've got a ton of square footage. We're at the old Woodland Hills Baptist Church there in Fondren. We would love to have Reclaim come and office there. And so they were so good to us. And we moved to Fondren, set up camp there, and have been in Jackson ever since.
Ever since, as well as bringing your ministry of Reclaim right back to Mississippi, to Marks, Mississippi, to be specific. And we'll get into that story and more with Brett and Allison coming up next. We're finding out more about the Barnhill adventure. I would say that would be fair to say your marriage has been since you guys got together, Brett and Allison, who are now running Reclaim, which is back in Mississippi, or has always been in Mississippi, but it's now located in central Mississippi. But y'all still do your work over in Africa. But we are going to shift gears because y'all shift gears a little bit, brought back the same model that maybe you guys were using with great success over there to Mississippi, and it landed you in Marks, Mississippi. So, Brett, you do a great job of sharing why Marks. So why did Reclaim choose Marks, Mississippi?
Absolutely. Well, our leadership, we were making a lot of progress in Africa. We had gone from Botswana, started work in Lesotho and even in Zimbabwe, but really we're just seeking, yes, there's children in need around the world, but what about our own kids, right home here in Mississippi? And so our former director, Jason, started kind of asking around and praying and trying to figure out, where would we start if we were going to do something in Mississippi? And so he had a good friend, Lance Reed, who's a Chick-fil-A owner-operator up in Oxford, Mississippi, and went and knew that Lance was involved with some stuff, going on in the state. So called Lance and said, hey, Lance, we really want to start trying to do something here in the state. Where should we start? So Lance said, well, great. Why don't you come to Quitman County with me? And Jason kind of didn't know where, what was Quitman County. And Lance said, well, no, we're going to go to Marks, Mississippi. And so drove up to Oxford. They got in the car together and went out to Marks, which is right across the interstate on your way to Clarksdale, Mississippi. A lot of y'all have been out and done stuff in Clarksdale. But Marks is a very small town, but has a lot of historical significance when it comes to the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. used to go and preach there at a little bitty Baptist church called Valley Queen Missionary Baptist Church. And when he was there, he spoke a lot about the poverty that he saw. Quitman County was for a very long time the poorest county in the entire country, not just the state of Mississippi, and still is a very poor county. And so Jason and Lance and a few other leaders sat down actually that day with the mayor and with the school superintendent. It was a new superintendent, Dr. Evelyn Jossel, who had just come in. This is end of 2015. And really our posture as Reclaim was, hey, we want to serve, but we don't have this grand idea of how we want to help. We just want to know what the need is. And so sat down with the leadership and asked the question, what are the biggest needs in Quitman County and specifically in Marks? And so everyone was giving their input. And when it came time for the superintendent to speak, Dr. Jossel said, well, I'll tell you exactly what we need.
Don't you love people like that?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, here, shoot it to you straight.
Yes. And so she said, we need three things. And the first thing she said was, we need teachers because, it was a low-income area, very hard. If you know anything about education, public education in Mississippi, we have a massive teacher shortage as it is right now, even before the pandemic, and it's just been worsened by all the terrible conditions, around the state. So she said we have a hard time getting certified, qualified teachers to come teach in Quitman County. And part of the reason is, number two, we don't have adequate housing for those teachers. If we do get teachers, they're living somewhere else. Marks is 30 minutes from Clarksdale, 45 minutes from Oxford, an hour from Memphis. And so teachers a lot of times would live where there's great housing and then come in and teach in Quitman County.
And that would get old. Making
exactly.
that sort of commute every day. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she said, teachers, housing for teachers, and Lord knows we need Jesus. She's actually the pastor's wife of a pastor from Lambert, Mississippi, there in Quitman County, and was just really passionate about that these kids need to know the Lord. That will change their lives. And so Reclaim said, all right, well, we can work on trying to help you get teachers. We can, come up with some kind of plan for housing. And we got the Jesus thing, figured out. We can do that. We're a faith-based nonprofit. We were very excited. And so I think before our team had left Marks that day, they had already formulated a plan. We need to buy some property, and we need to get the word out. We need teachers. And so we started looking around. There was a few options there, but there was actually a building on Main Street, Marks, Mississippi, which was an old Masonic lodge. It was one of the first buildings that was built there in 1917. And so the downstairs of the building had been a pharmacy and kind of a dime store for a long time, and the upstairs was the lodge. But this was a big building. It was 8,000 square feet, 4,000 underneath, and then another 4,000 square feet up top. And so one of our board members is Ty Garner. He's a contractor here locally in Jackson. He got involved, and they went and took a look at the building and said, well, we can turn this 4,000 square feet into apartments for teachers. And so...
Do you know what year that was? Because that's the story that we had here on Good Things. Either right when it was opened and they had I don't even know if there was a teacher yet living in there.
Right.
Or maybe whenever it was just the idea, and I think there may have been a capital campaign or something sort of rally around it. But that is it's so cool to me to see it all come full circle.
Sure.
So what year was that?
It was the end of 2016, I believe, when we purchased the building. Yeah. And then our first teachers were in there in the 2017-18 school year. So what was neat was we purchased the building, we renovated and moved into the building in 2017, which was the centennial anniversary of that building. It had been used for so many different things over 100 years, and then we were able to repurpose it for education and a community center for children. So it was a really cool celebration. Had a big ribbon cutting and all that.
You know, and if you wouldn't have taken the time by you just being the reclaimed team of asking the community what they needed, I mean, other investors may have come in and redone a beautiful job into a boutique, a hotel or maybe restaurants. But and yes, that may would have brought revenue, and it's still opportunity for that. But it wouldn't have fixed anything to make Marks better. But what you heard that they needed were an attractive something to attract quality teachers, and it worked, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Our very first teacher, Jason, put the word out there trying to recruit teachers, and there was a young man at Ole Miss named Daniel Myrick, and Daniel had grown up at Pine Lake here in Flowood and was studying biology, but was actually already deciding maybe he wanted to do education. He wasn't quite sure. Maybe he wanted to teach and coach. And when he heard about the opportunity, he fast-tracked himself to get licensed as a teacher and said, sign me up, I'll go. And so Daniel and a young man named Wiley Maddox moved. This is before we even had the building, and things were still in the process of being purchased. And actually, he lived in someone's attic apartment. So I actually spent some time there. We would stay the night when we were trying to get work done on the building in his attic apartment, and it was a humble place to be. But he took the jump before there was even housing available.
I love too that the first two teachers that got connected with Reclaimed were men.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a God thing. Nothing against male teachers. I think we need more of them. We just don't have very many of them, and particularly not many that are looking to move to the Delta to sort of have like a ministry / profession. Which really, when you relocate to be a teacher somewhere, just like Allison moving to Africa, it's you're taking skills as a profession, but it's also a ministry. There's another sort of a component to that. So after so many years there, I know the pandemic was a bumpy ride for everybody, but you guys were able, you plus the community there in Marks, were able to transform that school from a what grade to what grade? Yeah,
so just in a matter of a few short years, the school district, when Dr. Jossell took over and Reclaim got involved and lots of other people really, putting effort towards it, the school district went from an F school rating to a C school rating, which is huge.
Oh, that's huge.
A massive success. Yeah.
Massive. And it was out, it was without, and no disrespect, but the state didn't have to get involved.
Right.
It wasn't like, anyone had to really step in and bring in the reins. It was able to be done, I would say privately, nonprofit-wise, but still within the own community. The community did it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a huge partnership effort. There's so many people who've been passionate about Marks for a long time. It's just getting the right people involved at the right time. I mean, we've been so blessed with, since we started out. I mean, donors stepping up, helping us purchase the building, helping purchase things that are needed, equipment for the school district, and so many organizations that we've partnered with. Reclaim, we're very passionate about partnership, with people who are on the ground already doing work. We've done that in Africa. We came alongside churches who honestly were already taking care of kids. We just wanted to assist and make the assist and figure out how can we help, what's our role, and how can we leverage our relationships and resources and model, really towards making good.
Allison, you mentioned you have to kind of see it to believe it, kind of my words, not yours, by going to Africa, and then it really changes you. And I think one thing that would do good for all of us here in Mississippi is to at least see or be better aware of maybe the needs in our own state. it's easy to read a headline. It's easy to maybe hear statistics, but until you've walked into those schools and understand what an F rating really is, or until you've gotten to know that those are mothers and fathers or aunts and uncles and grandparents who are, for the most part, trying to do their best, and it is a broken sort of system or situation, it's hard to really, get the need of why people are so passionate about helping it. Did you feel that same aha whenever you went to Marks for the first time as when you went to Africa for the first time?
I continue to feel that way every time that we go to Marks and hear stories coming out of Marks. I mean, stories of brokenness, abandonment, neglect, and just lack of opportunity, that moves you to action. It moves you to action when you see it. And so the statistics, the trajectory, like Brett can share later on maybe about how they predict the number of prison beds needed in the future are by literacy rates at third grade, because they know if these kids aren't reading, we're going to need this many prison beds in the future. So yeah, it definitely moved me in the same way.
We hope we're moving you into action, or at least getting more involved or understanding the needs. And there's still work to be done, and we're going to talk about that coming up next here on Good Things. We're continuing our conversation with Reclaim leaders, Brett and Allison Barnhill. Brett being the executive director. They have taken what they learned in Africa and brought it to Marks, Mississippi, and seeing great success. I think anytime you can take a school system without getting the state involved from an F to a C rating, and then COVID, is always just speaks volumes to that there are solutions, which is part of y'all's mission statement, which is gospel, hope, and practical solutions. And I think, anytime we get to hear those success stories, to me, I just think those are the good things that should be shouted through the rooftop. But there's still work to be done, right? You guys take a deep, not a wide sort of approach. And while you've had, great success here in the first couple of years at Marks, you have dreams for the future. So when someone asks you about the future of Reclaim there, I know that's a loaded question, Brett. Where does your mind sort of go, though?
Yeah, well, we have kind of a saying, we want to see every child set up to succeed by their community. And when it comes to Marks, that requires a lot of partnership and a lot of forethought and intentionality with how we are helping these children succeed. So education obviously is a big part of that. And we talked a little bit about Daniel. We've had, to my knowledge, I think there was 15 teachers that we've had come through Quitman County, which has just been an incredible thing. And the neat thing about that is, so Daniel is now in his 6th year at the school. He has earned such a reputation and earned trust with the community. And actually got married, and instead of choosing to relocate and maybe still teach in Quitman County but live somewhere else, he and his wife Kendall Myrick, who they are both our Quitman County ministry directors, they live right there off of Main Street in a house that was built probably around the same time as the building that we have was. And so him and his wife have taken up residence there, live there. And so we're recruiting teachers. That's one thing that, we always love to get the word out there. Hey, we want teachers to come and fill spots in Quitman County. Our hope would be that, if we develop a model over the next 3 to 5 years, we will be able to also do something like this in other parts of the state, potentially in the Delta, if that model would work in similar communities in the Delta, but also potentially in Jackson and other places. And so it's not just Daniel and Kendall. We have other teachers, a young man named Drew Hall, who came also from Ole Miss. He was a Teach for America teacher who found out about what we were doing, but that we had a particular mindset that we wanted to mentor children and we wanted to invest in these kids' lives spiritually. And he said, hey, I want to sign up for that. So he moved into the Village. We call actually the building, we didn't mention that, we call it the Village after the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And so the Village apartments, he moved in, stayed there for 2 years. And then when he got engaged, him and his fiance at the time, Laura, started praying about and thinking about the decision, where are we going to live? We can't live in these apartments, with all the other teachers. Let's figure out what we're going to do. And so instead of living in Oxford and commuting, Laura actually works for the university there. And so it would make sense for them to live in Oxford and commute to Marks. They decided to rent a house right there in Marks and live there. And so we want to fill the need in education in Quitman County, and we're making progress towards that. We have 4 teachers. Actually, at the end of this month, we have a 5th teacher moving into the village to live there and to teach. But really, our goal is investing in the lives of these kids.
And I hear you, Brett, and I know our Good Things family is saying it too. But it's like, you know what? I'm good with my job. I don't think I want to be a teacher, but I love what you guys are doing. So there's got to be a way that I can be connected or at least learn more. And Allison, I know it takes a lot of faith to put your whole family's life too on this journey of being missionaries and being in terms of nonprofit, because that takes the buy-in from the community. It takes the buy-in from other people's to keep seeing that going forward in the form of money. I mean, in the form of funds and donations and things of that matter, not just partnerships. And you guys have come up with a really great way to sort of help raise funds, but then offer a fun opportunity for folks to maybe get some fun things out of it. So tell us about the raffle, because I'm more likely to buy a raffle ticket than be your teacher.
Come on, buy a raffle ticket then. Well, so during COVID, like everybody, we had to kind of recalibrate our game plan. And so we couldn't do an in-person dinner, which is a special time that we have every year. We have a fundraising dinner. And so we came up with the idea to do a raffle. So people could purchase raffle tickets, and with their ticket purchase, have an opportunity to win an awesome prize. But we kind of see it as, even if you don't win an awesome prize, you're making an investment in the most incredible, resilient, special people that we know. And so we did it last year, and it was a huge success. We raised around $60,000 for our ministries in Africa and in Marks. So we're doing it again this year, even though we also had an in-person dinner this year. The raffle was so successful that we're opening it up again this year. And last year we mostly just did Facebook advertising and kind of word of mouth. And so we're hoping this year to even eclipse that mark of 60,000 that we did last year. And Brett's a good prize promo voice. So I'll let him do the prize.
I'm very passionate about our prizes.
That's what people buy raffles, right?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's like I can't win this raffle, but these are all my favorite things. We sit down and we try to deliberate what would somebody want. And so this year we have a electric golf cart, a lithium powered golf cart from Ben Nelson up in Madison that we're raffling away. It's a $13,000 golf cart. Tricked out, lifted up, big tires, all that kind of stuff. The second thing is a whitetail hunt. We knew in Mississippi, what do people spend money on?
Hunting.
Yeah. So we said this would be a great opportunity for someone to support a great cause, help out with education in Mississippi and take care of kids in Africa, but also have a chance at an awesome hunt. So it's actually a Michigan whitetail, which Michigan deer are pretty big. So we have a whitetail hunt. We have a custom vacation with Magnolia Travel Group. So it's a $5,000 voucher, basically. So if you want to add on to that, you can and go anywhere in the world.
Which they're a Mississippi-based company made up of women.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Brittany Schrock is a good friend of ours, and so she would be tailor making a vacation. And then we have a Tempo Smart Gym, which I go to the Baptist Healthplex in Madison. That's my thing. But with COVID, a lot of people started working out at home, and so this is actually a California-based company that it's an awesome gym. It's AI. It learns your movements and your body and everything, and kind of tailors your exercises towards that. And the last thing is a Traeger pellet grill. And so it's one of the kind of newest and latest things out there, and one of the best grill options for people who you like to smoke things and you like to do a good charcoal grill on the weekends, but on weeknights, hey, you want to kind of have something a little bit more simple. And so this is something you can literally plug your phone into. You can put your meat on, start smoking it, run to the grocery store, and your phone will tell you what the temperature is, and you can change it. It's all
fancy.
Smartified. It's a Wi-Fi grill. So 5 prizes. You can play the raffle at www.reclaimproject.org, which is our website. There's a button there on the banner that you can click. But 100% of the proceeds goes towards helping us fund our ministry in Marks and Africa.
And the entries are only $25.
$25.
So is it 25? Do you do a 25 for what you want to win, or is it
Correct.
like
you can kind of put it in whatever hat you want.
Because then I'm thinking, then it becomes like Dirty Santa. Well, I got the hunt. I don't want to hunt, but I want the grill. Can we now start to...
You can put it towards what you want. I would not be playing for the whitetail. I would be going for the vacation.
Although my husband would be very excited about it. But
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so when's the deadline?
So the raffle ends at midnight on December 14th. So we're, I think, 4 weeks out at this point. Four more weeks to play. Yep.
And remember, I love when you mentioned it's a way to help pay into education here in Mississippi. And yes, you guys are a nonprofit. You're serving in Africa. You're also serving here in Marks. But at the end of the day, you really are helping to build up the education system there in Marks. And I think we can all support the fact that we know that the more educated our youth get,
Absolutely.
like, quality education, it's a ripple effect of all the good things that can sort of come and sort of break generational chains that can be on a family or within a community. Not that you leave the elders behind or the current parental, situation, but if you're going to see lasting change, the best investment's going to be with the youth, and we can all get behind helping out the education system that way. You mentioned some statistics with literacy and prison rates. I find that very interesting. Round back that. Brett, what are those?
Yeah, so I believe it is in the third grade or second grade, the way that they measure how many prison beds they're going to need. And, I've heard that statistic. It just blows my mind, that's the case. But we do have a pretty high literacy rate. We actually started a program at the village. So our downstairs room is for after-school programs for kids, which is real similar to what we do in Africa with our children. But these kids are coming in. We've actually paid some money to get curriculum for these kids to be in a very high-quality reading program because we're combating these statistics head on in our after school program. So we have about 44 kids who are a part of our after school program. And actually one of our board members, her name is Rosalind Clinton. She's the principal at the elementary school and has been so instrumental in us figuring out what's the best way for us to help these young kids. Because, we want to reach them when they're young, not necessarily try to deal with problems, when kids are facing, in their older years. We want to start as young as we can with these children. And so Rosalind actually, they were having a child that was really struggling in school, and she's able to refer that child to our after-school program, get the parental consent to get them signed up and coming. And so now she is a part of our reading program. And so we're trying to combat those statistics and help these kids succeed through education, but also really the cool thing about teachers is a teacher is so much more than someone just giving you knowledge. Right.
Absolutely. And we will learn a little bit more about Reclaimed coming up next. Good things. We're rounding out our conversation with the Barnhills. That's Brett and Allison. They are the leadership for Reclaim. And I hope you've at least gotten inspired to learn a little bit more about what they're doing on the grounds there in Marks as well as in Africa. But, we love to encourage people to visit Mississippi here, Brett. And I think Marks is one of those places, as you first mentioned, we drive through it to maybe go to Clarksdale. We drive through it maybe to go to some other areas. Are there any markers or places where we can at least stop and have a reason to look around and maybe see Marks for ourselves in a safe and not Snoopy kind of manner, but, to
Absolutely.
really visit Mississippi?
Yeah, it's really easy to find. You go up I-55 to Batesville, take a left, and headed towards Clarksdale. It's about 20 miles, off the interstate. And actually, Amtrak, right before COVID hit, put a train station that you can take. It's the New Orleans to Chicago train. So you can actually purchase. There's a daily train that goes from Jackson, Mississippi to Marks, Mississippi, and that would be a great opportunity to stop off in Marks, move around, see, what there is to see there, but also, places like Clarksdale where there's fun things, going on, in different venues like Morgan Freeman has Ground Zero bar there and all types of different cool things to see. So, yeah, Marks has a lot to offer, and also I would say, and this is my pitch, we would love to have you come volunteer at the Village. We'd love for you to come see what we're doing, meet some of the people who are involved, both our teachers, but also just volunteers and community members. It's an awesome community. There's great food, as you know, in the Delta, but in Marks, Mississippi, we have some great restaurants that you can come to.
I've also heard your great pitch, Brett, which I'll ask you to hear on Good Things, for thinking about Marks as a place for investment. I mean, you never know who's listening to Good Things, and we love to be big dreamers here. Mm-hmm. But it took, an innovative sort of vision for the Village to turn something that was once a general store and a lodge into great housing for teachers and a community center underneath. But right across the street, you hope one day someone's like, I want what building and do
Absolutely.
what with it.
Yeah, so the old Marks Hotel is across the street from us, and I look at it all the time. It's a very dilapidated building, but when you look at the historical photos of Marks itself, it was the first building there. I mean, there's pictures of that hotel being there and then nothing on Main Street. And so what's neat about that building, it's right adjacent to us. And you've got, you think about Clarksdale, lots of people are going there to see the blues and all the different history that's happened in the Delta. But right there in Marks, Mississippi, there's a lot. I'm a big dreamer and vision. So when I look at it, I can already kind of see it done. Some of y'all know Charlie Pride, the country and western.
Never heard of him.
Charlie Pride.
Kidding.
He passed away this past year, but his family is still in Marks, Mississippi. And so, I've thought and actually got the idea from a former board member of ours, J.B. Denton, who's a farmer there. He said, "Well, Paul Pride, he's got all the personal effects of Charlie Pride, and why couldn't we make a museum right here in Marks, Mississippi, in the bottom of the Marks Hotel, and then have a place for people to be able to stay?" And so, how cool would it be to see other historic buildings in the Mississippi Delta used not only just for tourism and for enjoyment, but that's income generating, not just for Quitman County, but for the state. And if we want opportunities for this community and for these kids, then somebody's got to get out there and create them. And so I'm a big believer that anything's possible when you set your mind to it. So,
Allison, I want to go back and end sort of with you because 11 years ago, you were a student at Mississippi College. You had no idea. You couldn't have written this script for where you would be with your husband and children and the difference that you're making. And that's the same with so many great stories we have here on Good Things. It's just someone who had the courage to have the faith to step out and sort of follow whatever it was on the inside. Mm-hmm. And so what would you say to someone who's thinking, well, that's great, that's them, mm-hmm. they're go-getters, whatever, that may have a dream or a vision. Maybe it's not to this extent or to, go to Africa or whatever it may be, but they feel like they're being called to make a difference, but they're terrified. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them?
One of my favorite missionary stories is the Elliots, who they did amazing mission work in South America, but she had a quote of, "When you don't know what to do, just do the next right thing." And so I think if God's put a passion in your heart or you have a big dream, don't think about the 100 steps it's going to take to cross the finish line. Just think about what would be the next right thing in making that come to reality. And if it's God's plan, He'll make it happen. Because I'm just going to tell you, we did not make all this happen. I mean, He wove it together. At times it felt like these random pieces, and looking back, it's this tapestry that is creating this. It has created this awesome picture. But I would say if it's on your heart, do the next right thing, and the doors will keep opening.
And the next right thing would be buy a raffle ticket.
That's
so
right.
Where do we
buy
go,
a
Brett?
Raffle ticket.
Reclaimproject.org.
Reclaimedproject.org. Buy a raffle ticket. This is the first of probably many times you'll hear Reclaimed here on Good Things. And thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Rebecca.
All right, you guys stick with us.